So I wanted to make a video about Tim Lincecum game used items, and unfortunately this video is going to be a little less interesting than some of the other videos. Maybe the other videos aren't that interesting, but this will be even less interesting because most of the Lincecum items don't really have a great story to tell. Even though I tend to like to collect items with a good story, with Tim Lincecum things are a little different because Lincecum items are so difficult to find and rare that everything that I bought is basically just because it was Lincecum. As rare as Lincecum items are, the Lincecum items with actual interesting stories are even more rare. Part of the reason why is because MLB didn't start really authenticating items in earnest until maybe around 2014 or so, maybe 2013. And so Lincecum played for the Giants between 2007 and 2015. So the majority of his items are either unauthenticated or are just authenticated in a very generic way. And because it's very hard to photo match things in the late 2000s and early 2010s, it's really hard to photo match a lot of Lincecum stuff. And by the time MLB got around to really authenticating things and the Getty images and video were high definition enough, Lincecum kind of petered out and wasn't very good anymore. On top of that, the Giants prior to 2014 usually only issued a few jerseys to each player, maybe 2 homes and 2 roads and 2 alternates and maybe some one-off turn back the clock jersey. And so there just weren't a lot of jerseys produced for players between 2007 and 2014. And it wasn't until really 2015 that the Giants got into the game of mass producing jerseys and pulling jerseys after every good game the player would have. And hence, even though 2015 and later there might have been 25 jerseys of each star player, prior to that there may have been 7 or 8 jerseys of each star player. And since Lincecum played prior to most of the mass production, there just aren't a lot of Lincecum jerseys out there. And because Lincecum was a pitcher, there unfortunately weren't a lot of bats out there either, since Lincecum only pitched 1 out of every 5 games as a starter, and hence used less than 20% of the quantity of bats that most position players use. So all in all, just not a lot of Lincecum stuff out there. I bought what I could find and I paid a lot for it, but in my mind it was worth it because Lincecum is just one of these once-in-a-generation type players. He was so special. He looked like an average guy, looked like he could be any one of us, and yet he was just dominant on the mound. And he came up as the heralded prospect in 2007 and realized all of his potential, way beyond what anyone could have ever dreamed. Won 2 Cy Young Awards in 2008 and 2009. Led the Giants to a World Series championship, their very first San Francisco World Championship in 2010, and pitched awesome in the postseason. Pitched 2 no-hitters, won 3 World Championships. Just an amazing amount of accomplishments for such a short time that he was at his peak. And just a lovable guy with such a quirkiness about him. I think when all is said and done and people look back at the Giants championship era, certainly players like Posey and Bumgarner have racked up a bigger WAR and were consistent and better for a longer amount of time. But I think when all is said and done, the player who may be the most beloved of all players might be Lincecum for Giants fans. So I just wanted to share some of the things that I've collected. The other interesting thing about Lincecum is, whereas most of the Giants game-used stuff from the championship era has significantly depreciated in price over the years due to increasing quantity, Lincecum stuff is different. There's not a lot of stuff out there for him, and as people's appreciation or fans' appreciation of Lincecum has grown, his stuff is actually appreciated in price, which I'll illustrate by talking about these bats. So the first item I want to talk about is this 2008 Lincecum game used bat. This was the very first Lincecum bat that I ever purchased. I've been looking for a bat of his for quite some time and was just delighted when I found this one. I bought this in early 2018 and paid about 500 bucks on eBay. It was an auction item, and was really happy with it. It has no authentication, as most of the bats in 2008 from the Giants had no authentication. I tried to photo match it, but there's hardly any photos out there of Lincecum taking at bats in 2008, and so it's just one of these items that looks like it was probably used by him, and certainly looks like it was issued to him, and just happy to have it in my collection. It was also a Cy Young award-winning year for him. The next bat is a 2009 bat, which came with a letter of authenticity from the Giants, a little better provenance than the 2008 one. This was also a a Cy Young award winning year for Lincecum, his back-to-back Cy Youngs. This one has a little more use, has more ink transfers and ball marks on it. Interestingly, this one came up for sale a few months after the first one, and I bought this on eBay at auction for about $700. So it was an instant $200 price increase. Then subsequently, maybe half a year later, I found this one. This is from 2013. And this one has an MLB hologram. By that time, the Giants were hologramming all of their bats to specific plays, and I believe this was used on May 1st, 2013. It wasn't used for anything interesting. I think maybe just a foul ball or ground out or something along those lines. But I was happy to get this bat because it was my first MLB authenticated bat for Lincecum. And I just honestly have never found one of these for sale in the 3 years that I've been collecting. I've never found an MLB authenticated game used Lincecum bat that was authenticated to an actual MLB game. So I was thrilled to get this one, but I paid over 900 bucks for this one. So you can see the progression in price, although maybe the progression in provenance also may be part of that. Just of note, just this past year, a few months ago, there's a Lincecum bat without any hologram or photo match that was from 2012 and sold for $1,250 on eBay. So these things really are increasing in price. Given how rare these Lincecum bats are, once again, I'm just thrilled to have any Lincecum bats, and I do not hold these to the higher standard of wanting them to be from big plays or big games. When bats are this rare, you basically try to find anything you can that looks like it was used by the player. Those are my 3 Lincecum bats. The next 2 Lincecum items I wanted to talk about are a couple of helmets of his. Interesting thing to note about helmets is, as I've talked about before, Giants black helmets are generally worn for a player for pretty much the whole season in general, unless it was a special issue helmet. And so here I have one whole season helmet and one special issue helmet. I'll describe both of these. The first one is a whole season helmet worn during the 2019 season by Lincecum. I've photo matched this to games that were played throughout the entire season, and the reason why I really enjoy this helmet is this was worn during the 2009 season, during which he was a Cy Young Award winner. It was his second of back-to-back Cy Young Awards, and was really from his peak period of when he was at the peak of his powers as a pitcher. He wasn't the best hitter in the world, but that's okay. I'll take anything of Lincecum's that I can find, quite honestly. And to own something that he wore pretty much for the whole season during one of the greatest regular season pitching performances throughout the season of any Giants player ever, I think that's pretty special. And if you think about it, he played for the Giants for 9 seasons, so of the whole season issued helmets, there are only 9 of them out there, and it's really cool to own one of them. Occasionally the Giants did have special issue helmets. In 2013 and 2015, for instance, they issued gold lettered helmets to be used during the gold ceremony game. After a team wins a World Series, the MLB allows the team to wear gold lettered uniforms and gold lettered helmets if they choose for one game. Generally, it's usually the opening day game at home of the season after which they won the World Championship. And they usually have a nice on-field ceremony where every player is introduced and described what some of their heroic moments were from the season prior. And this was the one issued to Lincecum. You can see that it has the gold lettering on the front. Of course, Lincecum didn't play in this game, so presumably this game, which was played in April of 2013, presumably he never wore this. So it is just a special issue helmet, but nonetheless I felt it was a special moment for Lincecum and for the rest of the Giants, as it was their commemoration of their World Series victory during opening day. So I have 3 Lincecum jerseys. Again, none of them are super significant, but I'm happy to own any at all. The first one is from 2012. This is a Orange Friday Tim Lincecum jersey. Orange Friday jerseys are worn on Friday night games at AT&T Park. I was able to photo match this to 2 games in 2012, one in September and one in August. I don't think he pitched particularly well on either game, but in 2012 he really didn't pitch well at all for most of the season. So that's going to be a repeated theme here when I talk about these jerseys. It was really hard to find any Lincecum jerseys where he pitched well during that period when he was in his decline. Nonetheless, this was a 2012 World Series championship year, which makes this jersey somewhat special. Also, 2012 was one of the years where the Giants did only issue 2 homes and 2 roads and 2 orange alternates, and hence a very difficult year to find a Lincecum jersey at all. So very happy to have this one. The next jersey is from 2014. This is a 2014 home jersey. I was able to photo match this to a game in April of 2014. I believe that was not a very well pitched game either. This one was worn on Mother's Day and has the Mother's Day patch also. I believe it was actually authenticated to Mother's Day, which was a game he didn't pitch, but I was able to photo match it to the April game that he did pitch. And the last Lincecum jersey I have is a road alternate jersey. These were worn on the road on Sundays, whenever the Giants played a road game on a Sunday. And I was able to photo match this to 2 games during the 2014 season. And interestingly, this is the only jersey I have that he wore when he won a game. I photo matched it to a game in June and a game in July in 2014. And interestingly, I believe he used this jersey 2 starts after his no-hitter in 2014. So it must have been, both of these games were pitched in July, not in June. But at any rate, so it's somewhat special that 2 starts prior to the first game that he wore this, he had just pitched a no-hitter, and it was actually during a period of time that lasted all of about a month when he had kind of a resurgence and pitched several strong outings in a row. The game, 2 games after the no-hitter, he pitched 6 1/3 innings and only gave up 1 run for the win. I wish I could find jerseys from earlier when he was in his prime, but those are just really hard to find, and the few that are out there are at least double, if not triple, the price that these would have cost. If you think about it, let's say the Giants issued 8 jerseys a year from 2007 through 2014 on average. So that's, 8 years, 64 jerseys, and then let's say in 2015, let's say he had 25 jerseys. So what are we up to? Somewhere around 90, 95 jerseys. So if Lincecum only had, say, 95 jerseys in his career, I know one guy, a friend of mine, that has over 20 of his jerseys and isn't interested in selling any of them. So there just really aren't a lot of Lincecum jerseys out there to be owned. So once again, illustrating the same concept that if you can find one and the price isn't too bad, it's not a bad idea to try to get one if you're looking for one, because they're really hard to find. So the last 2 Lincecum items I want to show here both actually were used in significant games. This first one is a ball that I've shown in a previous video that was pitched by Lincecum in Game 1 of the 2012 World Series. It was pitched to Avisail Garcia in the top of the 6th inning, and it was the ball that the bottom just fell out of it as a slider, and Avisail Garcia waved and missed at a ball in the dirt for strike 3. So this was a Lincecum strikeout. It was his 2nd strikeout of the night. He pitched 2 1/3 innings in relief of Barry Zito, and of the 7 batters he faced, he struck out 5. Lincecum was just awesome in relief during the 2012 postseason, and nowhere was that better on display than when he took the mound in Game 1 of the 2012 World Series and struck out just about every batter he faced. This ball actually does have the scuff mark from where it hit the dirt during the strikeout. Then the last item I have to show is this game-used base. This was the 3rd base that was on the field on June 25th, 2014, during Tim Lincecum's 2nd no-hitter at AT&T Park against the Padres. And this base was in the ground when Hector Sanchez drove in the first run of the game. And then, interestingly enough, it was also in the ground when Lincecum led off the 3rd inning, the bottom of the 3rd inning, with a single. Tiny Tim getting a base hit during his no-hitter. Who would have thunk? At any rate, he advanced all the way to 3rd base, where he stood on this bag, making this a bag that he actually did have a direct connection to. And then he was able to score on Pablo Sandoval's double. He did sign this base and signed it and commemorated the fact that it was a no-hitter, that the base was used in a no-hitter. And one of my favorite pieces, for certain, at least one of my favorite bases, given that it was used in this historically significant game. It is almost impossible to find items from no-hitters, and especially when it's a particularly historically significant no-hitter like this one was for Giants fans.